Before the streets became her home, Ava Morgan lived in a world of melodies and metronomes. Born to a single mother in a quiet town, she spent hours beside an upright piano that had seen better days. Music wasn't just her passion, it was her refuge. By 10, she was performing at local recitals, her delicate hands dancing across ivory keys with a precision that left audiences breathless. But talent couldn't shield her from life's cruelty. When her mother fell ill, the bills piled up faster than the notes she could play. The hospital visits drained their savings, and the dream of music school slipped through her fingers. When her mother passed, Ava was 16, armed with nothing but a few compositions and an aching heart. With no family to turn to, she drifted from shelter to shelter, clutching her mother's last gift, a small, worn-out photo of the two of them standing by that piano. The city was unkind to people like her. Every corner held judgment. Every face carried assumptions. To most, she was invisible, a homeless girl with dirt-streaked cheeks and tired eyes. But deep inside, her passion still burned quietly, waiting for a moment to breathe again. She found solace near an abandoned music store, where an old street piano stood under a flickering light. Every evening, she'd sit beside it, hoping someone might let her play for a meal. Yet each time she reached out, laughter met her instead of kindness. Still, something inside told her not to give up, because even the most broken instrument can play the sweetest song when it finds the right hands. Before the streets became her home, Ava once lived a life filled with rhythm and hope. She grew up in a modest apartment where her mother, a waitress with tired eyes and gentle hands, worked double shifts just to afford piano lessons. The sound of keys clicking through the thin walls was the soundtrack of Ava's childhood. While other children played outside, she practiced scales until her fingers ached, chasing the dream her mother believed in even more than she did. By the age of 12, Ava had begun to attract attention. Local teachers spoke of her as a prodigy, someone who felt music rather than merely played it. Scholarships were discussed, competitions were won, and for a brief moment, it seemed her life would be measured not in hardship, but in harmony. Then, the music stopped. Her mother's sudden illness arrived like a storm that never passed. Hospital lights replaced stage lights. Medical bills replaced sheet music. When her mother died, the only melody Ava heard was the echo of her mother's final words. "Don't ever stop playing." But grief doesn't pay rent, and dreams don't keep you warm. Within months, Ava found herself without a home. Her piano sold to cover debts, and her future fading like the last note of a forgotten song. She wandered the city streets with nothing but a backpack, a folded photograph, and a quiet determination. One evening, she stumbled upon an old upright piano left outside a shuttered cafe. It was battered, out of tune, and covered in graffiti. But to her, it was salvation. For the first time in months, she could touch the keys again. Each morning, Ava would wake beneath the same cracked awning, her breath visible in the cold air. The streets became her audience, though none came to listen. Still, she cleaned the piano every day with an old rag, treating it like a sacred relic. Passers-by often mocked her devotion. "It doesn't even work," someone once muttered. Others tossed coins near her feet, not for her music, but out of pity. Yet Ava kept returning, because the piano was the last piece of her identity that the world hadn't taken. She practiced silently, pressing keys with careful precision, though many stuck or produced no sound at all. Sometimes she'd hum the notes instead, hearing the symphony in her mind when the instrument couldn't deliver it. On good days, a stranger might smile or drop off a sandwich. But more often, there was only indifference, an endless blur of rushing feet, headphones, and cold stares. Ava's skin grew thinner to the wind, her body weaker with each missed meal. Still, her heart held the same stubborn rhythm her mother taught her to believe in. Every night, she whispered a promise to the stars, that she would play again, not for fame, not for applause, but to remind the world that beauty can rise even from brokenness. One afternoon, a group of teenagers gathered around her spot. Their laughter was sharp, cutting through the air like glass. They taunted her sign, "Can I play for food?" and took out their phones, recording her misery. They didn't see the quiet strength behind her weary eyes. They saw only a girl who didn't belong. Ava's hands trembled as she placed them on the keys. Her reflection in the glossy surface looked like a stranger's. For a long moment she hesitated. Memories of her old life flickered. Recitals, warm lights, her mother's voice telling her she was special. The cruelty around her felt deafening, but inside something began to stir. Her fingers pressed the first note, hesitant and hollow. Then another. The chords that followed weren't perfect, but they carried emotion that silence couldn't contain. The laughter softened. Even the wind seemed to pause as the broken piano came alive under her touch. What started as mockery began to shift into disbelief. People turned their heads. The rhythm she created told stories of loss, love, and resilience. Of a girl who refused to let the world decide her worth. But just as the music began to draw a small crowd, a voice from across the street barked, demanding she stop. A store owner. He claimed she was disturbing customers, lowering the image of the neighborhood. The same people who had just started recording her performance now stepped back, pretending they'd never cared. Ava's heart pounded. The melody faltered. Once again, she was reminded how quickly admiration could turn to rejection when it came from someone society refused to see. Yet in that moment of humiliation, she knew one thing. She couldn't stop now. Contribute. The man's angry voice cut through the melody, demanding she leave. But something inside Ava snapped. Years of pain, rejection, and silence colliding into defiance. She didn't stop. Her fingers struck the keys with renewed fire, creating a storm of sound that swallowed every insult, every sneer. The piano roared with life, and for once the street listened. The man's shouts faded beneath her music. Phones lowered, eyes widened. People who'd once mocked her now stood frozen, witnessing a girl reclaim her dignity through every trembling note. The music rose, fierce and unstoppable, her pain transformed into power. When the final note lingered in the air, silence followed, a silence heavier than applause. Then, a single clap broke through, followed by another, until the entire street echoed with thunderous appreciation. Ava didn't smile. Tears slid down her face as strangers dropped food, money, even business cards beside her. The same crowd that once mocked her now bowed their heads in awe. That night, as she warmed her hands by a small fire, she realized she'd given them more than music. She'd forced them to see their own prejudice. Sometimes, greatness doesn't live in concert halls. Sometimes, it waits on a cold sidewalk, asking only to be heard.